What's up everybody, FSC Trucking. In this video we're going to continue working on Orwell's new frame rails here. These are the 1/2-inch Vicon rails that are replacing Orwell's factory stock ones here. That's factory quarter with a frame bridge built in the center between the two axles. This stuff is 1/2-inch thick. It's made by Vicon out there in Ventura, Ohio. These rails were originally Crystal Miller's rails. I got them, I'm just replacing them when her new ones get made. So that's kind of, we've talked about that in the past, and that whole thing developed into building Orwell into a 4-axle tractor. Probably going to be, I think, possibly the only former Keene truck of Cabover vintage that'll be a 4-axle. Let me know if you know of a 4-axle old Keene truck that survives, because I don't think there is one. I don't know how many there were. I've seen photographs of them, but either way, I haven't ever seen one. I know of 3 trucks exactly like Orwell. There's one in Michigan, there's one that was owned by a dude in Illinois that used to be in Vineland, New Jersey, and then mine. I only know of 3, but again, either way. So what we're gonna start doing is, I gotta finish cleaning up this rails. I gotta finish cleaning up the stock ones here on the bottom, the originals, and then flip them over, and I will show you how we transfer, punch, and drill into the new rails to get them lined up exactly perfect. There is a couple things we have to, there are a couple things we have to change. Height for the cross members, that becomes an issue, and we'll go ahead and explain why. But we'll go back to when I finished cutting these rails and explain to you the difference between the flats on the rails, between the flanges, between the 1/2-inch rails and the 1/4-inch rails. Also why we're relocating the cross members and how we're going to head and do that. So we're going to go back to that piece of video from a few days ago, and then we're going to jump right back into this project right here. Either way, let's get this video started. So now we run into this problem, which is the cross member problem with these 1/2-inch rails. So this mark here is 1 7/8 from the bottom. This is 2, that's 2 1/4. This is a 5/8 bolt. These bolts are actually going to be 3/4, which is an 1/8 larger, so basically a 1/16 each way. If you look here, if you center that nut right with there, if you go any farther down, see how you go this way, it starts to come up. So then you go to 2 inches, exactly. Now you're flat, but the other one is going to be a little bit bigger. So if you come down a little bit to 2 1/4, this cap nut or this flange nut and anything bigger could go a little ways before it starts to kick out, say around the edge. That's the issue. So 2 1/4 is the answer. Ultimately, the frame has to be shifted 1/4 inch. I don't really see a choice in this matter. 1/4 inch, you can eat that up. The other thing is, this truck is going to have front airbags or something. It might wind up a little nose heavy. One of the things Crystal had said to me that could be an issue with this truck is because it's a Cabover, it's going to be heavy on the front end. We're probably going to have to replace the front axle with a 20,000-pound axle or even a 14,000-pound axle. To be honest, I'm not sure what axle's underneath this right now, but if we do have to add some height to it, if that becomes a problem, we can. That's an alignment shop issue. They can fix that up, but to make this fit, it has to go up 1/4 inch. What's up everybody, Steve here. Let me go ahead and interrupt this video real quick. Big Rig Chrome Shop, get and check out, link in the description below. 10% off with this promo code FSC10. FSC10 gets you 10% off loaded fender products. Go ahead and check them out, Big Rig Chrome Shop, link in the description below. Back to the video. So basically what you're doing is you're lowering the frame, thus bringing the front end up, which means you have to add between the spring. Let's say on the spring, if you're lowering the frame down, you have to compensate by lowering the spring, which is done by not lowering the spring, but adding a block or a shim between the axle and the spring itself. But here, obviously, that's where the hole would be for your 8 1/4. And you have all kinds of room to work here. So if this went up, That goes up. You can raise this up like a whole inch and be perfectly fine. It's down here it gets tight. But as far as for what we're doing here, so I can return the plasma cutter, I simply have to cut along this line up, and then that original cut in, which this cut here will match the factory frame pretty much exactly. So that's what I have to do. That's the figuring. After that's drilling. I plan on that being on the next video series of the frame here. So let's go ahead and cut this and be done with it. So one of the things that had to be done is I went and needle scaled the entire outside face of these frames, because this has to sit reasonably flat upside down on the new frame. You'll see why in a minute. But I went and needle scaled all the stuff off, removed a couple extra bolts that were sitting in there. And over here there's a little weld nub that sticks out. I have to just grind that flat, because that's going to hold the frame off the other frame when we put them together. You'll see. But this got to be pretty flat. So let me go ahead and grind those two nubs down, and then we'll go ahead and take the rails and flip them over. You got to bear in mind, the right cuts the left and the left cuts the right. Again, you'll see what I mean shortly. There we go. Now they're nice and flat. So take this away, then we just got to lift them up, put them up on there. The holes that are important that we have to drill are more along the line of your spring mounts, your shock mounts, like here, these four are your shock mounts. These are for your torque arms, also your frame protection bracket it goes over. And then your next spring mount. This gets deleted. I labeled them all on the top. Your fuel tank hangers, but these share with cross members, so that has to alter in height. More here. If I remember right, this cross member also here. And your stack stands, those have to be probably just centered. But then the front, these are 1/4 inch bolts where everything else is 5/8. So what we got to do is stand the frame up and level it's like a mark on the inside, because the inside is where it really matters on how we mark it, so we can transfer punch properly. So now what we'll do is we'll mark what they were on the inside so I know which ones to punch and which ones not to. So that's a shock mount. Cross member. Spring hanger. These are 5th wheel bolts. We don't do them. One here, what's that? That was open, so we're not transferring that. Shock mount. Oh, forgot. That's the torque arm. Torque arm. Cross member. Spring. Cross member. Tank step delete. These get deleted. These get deleted. That's the bottom for a fuel tank mount. So everything suspension wise has to be transferred exact. The cross members, the fuel tank mounts, and stack stands have to be altered. So we're gonna paint the altered stuff with primer. So that gets altered. That gets altered. Where's that bottom one? That gets altered. All right, so now we're ready to transfer. We'll just slide the rail across. This is where it'll be very obvious that the frame rails are different in thickness and height. So that's where. Okay, let go. That'll keep it lined up. When we transfer punch, you have to line everything up from the bottom because the suspension lines up, well, from the bottom. So now what I have is this new set of transfer punches. They're basically center punches set to the size of the hole. So these are all 5/8. So 5/8 is, it's an index, they're labeled. That's almost there. 21, 30 seconds, and that fits right in them perfectly. Remember, we're only punching the yellows. Shock mounts, torque arms, suspension brackets, everything else has to shift. That one's tight, tight, loose, loose. All right, so we'll have to change them up. Better. The amount of warping on this frame is incredible. The factory one? Mm-hmm. There we go. So I'm going to mark where the cross members go. The top bolts have to line up with the fifth wheel plate and the cross members. So we're just going to draw a center line to get an understanding approximately where center is on that cross member. Let's go ahead and bust these clamps loose. That's the depth. That's the depth of where the cross members need to line up to right there. Let's double check our measurements. That's off. Three-quarters. Three-quarters. Smaller one. smaller one. And that's how you stretch out a Peterbilt. See what I mean? I forgot to mark the holes. See, you see, you can find the other ones, right? They're just dents. Very difficult to find now. 84, right on the money. This one we punched. So now we're on the other side of the yellow line where the stretch is going to start to happen. Okay, so now your demarcation line for the +7 is right here. So now we're just punching out the cross members. So now the issue is up here where it bolts into the frame horn in Orwell, the actual truck. We have to raise this up a 1/4 inch, rather pull the frame down, otherwise the 3/4 bolts won't fit like we discussed earlier. Blowgun. Oh, it's plugged in. So this switch runs a magnet. Okay. So after each time we drill it, we have to move it. Just blow the filings off the bottom of the magnet. Make sense? Start drilling, squirt the water. That's it. want to flood it, but just pulse it like that. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh. Got our little rivet.
See, I thought you meant saying that was falling off the top of this thing.
Yeah, no, it's...
How many of those you go through?
Oh, no, no, no. We're a rivet factory at this point.
Crystal usually wears gloves, and she's like, gone. I'm like, ran it. All right, now here's where the frame bolts together, so we got to change the bit to 3/4. See how this does.